Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. And you'll never miss a story again. My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 42, a civil engineer born and raised in Oregon. For most of my adult life, I believed in solid foundations, in buildings and promises in marriage, especially in marriage. My wife Julia was everything I thought I needed: warm, clever, beautiful, in a natural way that didn't demand attention. We met at a conference back in Seattle. She worked in sustainable design, which felt poetic, considering I was in infrastructure. Our bond formed over blueprints, late night coffee, and a shared belief that love should be both passionate and practical. For nearly 11 years, it felt like we were building something lasting. We had our rhythm: weeknight dinners, weekend hikes, quiet conversations about the future. No drama, no infidelity, just life, unfolding. Or so I thought. The shifts started slow. I didn't notice it at first. Just subtle changes in her language. New phrases that sounded rehearsed, borrowed. She began attending retreats, weekend spiritual camps with friends I'd never met. She said they were energy cleansing and soul realignment gatherings. She came back from the first one radiant but distant. Her hugs were warm, yet her eyes no longer lingered on mine. At first, I thought it was just a phase. Maybe she needed a break, or maybe she was discovering something deeper within herself. I supported it. I encouraged her to explore. That was my mistake, assuming growth meant evolving together. It was a Tuesday night, the smell of stir-fry still clinging to the kitchen air when she dropped it. "I've been thinking," she began casually, like she was about to ask if we should repaint the guest room. "I believe monogamy might be outdated." I looked up from the sink, unsure I'd heard her right. She wasn't joking. Her voice was calm, almost rehearsed. She spoke like someone quoting a book, not a woman speaking to her husband. "I think," she continued, "we're limiting ourselves. Love isn't meant to be owned. I want to try an open marriage. I think it could expand us emotionally and spiritually." The room didn't spin. I didn't rage. I just stared at the woman I had once planned forever with and realized she wasn't asking. She had already decided. My thoughts went still. Not blank, just still. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I listened. That was all. Because something inside me shifted too, not in the direction she hoped. It wasn't betrayal I felt. It was clarity. I said I needed time to process, and she nodded like she was the patient one, like I was the one who needed catching up. She left that night to stay at her friend Celine's, one of the retreat women. That gave me space. And space is a dangerous gift when given to someone like me. The next day, I called a lawyer, discreetly, not for divorce, yet. I wanted to understand my position, our assets, our home, the retirement fund I had contributed to for 15 years. I learned what I needed. Oregon is a no-fault state, but documentation still matters. So I started collecting things: notebooks, financial statements, insurance policies. Quietly, patiently. While she talked about love being non-linear, I was mapping timelines. While she journaled in the backyard about higher vibrations, I was gathering tax returns. Her evolution was loud and performative. Mine was silent and strategic. Julia came and went as she pleased. New names slipped into conversation: Tyler, a healer who ran moon rituals; Serena, a tantric coach who believed jealousy was a social construct. I didn't ask questions. I didn't snoop. That would have made me a participant in her world, and I'd already made up my mind. I was leaving it. I didn't hate her. That's important to say. I wasn't here for revenge or drama. I just understood something now. Some people don't grow with you. They outgrow the version of themselves that loved you. And when they do, you don't chase. You let go. I kept showing up to work, kept doing what I'd always done: reliable, dependable, the guy who fixed things. Only this time, the thing I was fixing was my own life. Julia eventually started pushing the boundaries more openly. She brought someone into our home once, just a friend who stayed for tea. but I saw it in her eyes and the way she performed politeness. She was testing the limits, seeing how far I'd bend before I broke. I didn't break. I built. My exit plan wasn't about slamming doors. It was about removing my keys from locks that no longer opened anything worthwhile. I met with a financial advisor. I shifted investments. I opened a private savings account. Everything above board, everything traceable, but discreet. Julia talked more and more about liberation, as if I was some anchor dragging her down. She'd forgotten who helped her through grad school, who stayed up with her sick mother, who remodeled her art studio by hand. That didn't sting. Not anymore, because I had stopped trying to remind her of who I was. I started remembering who I am. We went to dinner one night. Her idea. She said she wanted to reconnect, but her phone buzzed the whole time, and she laughed at messages I couldn't see. I just smiled, asked her how her retreat planning was going. She said she might co-host one soon. She ordered a third glass of wine and said, "You've been so calm about all of this. I really appreciate how evolved you're being." I raised my glass and said, "I've just accepted things as they are." And that was true. I had accepted it. Which is why, the next morning, I quietly moved half of our shared savings into the account I'd prepared. Legally, documented, logged, just as my lawyer had advised. The thing about dignity is, it doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers. It waits. And then it walks away when no one expects it. There was a moment, one evening, when Julia sat beside me on the couch, scrolling through her phone, and I looked at her like a stranger in my home. That's when I knew the love had gone. Not in anger, but in understanding. I wasn't going to try and save something she no longer wanted to hold, and I was no longer afraid of starting over. I didn't leave that week, or the one after that. Timing mattered, not just for legal clarity, but for me. I wanted to walk away, not with bitterness, but with closure. Julia's world was accelerating. More retreats, more new faces, more talk of expanding consciousness. Meanwhile, I was pulling my roots up slowly, methodically. She had no idea I'd met with a realtor. No clue I had found an apartment near the office. Furnished, clean, quiet. I kept everything normal at home. I still made coffee in the mornings, still asked about her day. But I was practicing a different kind of love now. The kind I gave to myself. I remember the night I saw the final crack in us. Julia was getting ready for a weekend retreat, this one in Sedona. A desert spa, sage burning, silent meditations, and a shaman-led full moon ceremony. She was glowing with anticipation. Not for me, not for our life, but for escape. That's when I told her, "I won't be here when you get back." She stopped mid-zip with her suitcase and blinked, like she hadn't heard me right. "I've already signed the lease. I've already seen a lawyer. This marriage isn't working anymore, Julia." And I don't think either of us has been willing to admit it. She stared at me like I'd betrayed her, like I was the one breaking vows. She even laughed once, nervously, and asked if I was joking. I wasn't. And when she realized that, her reaction wasn't sorrow. It was indignation. She called me closed-minded, said I couldn't handle growth, that I was abandoning her during her spiritual awakening. I didn't argue. I didn't get defensive. I just nodded. Maybe you're right. But I refuse to be a placeholder while you go searching for yourself in someone else's bed. She scoffed, told me I was being dramatic, that this was the kind of thinking that kept people trapped in old ideas, that I was afraid of change. I told her I wasn't afraid. I had already changed. When she left for Sedona, I didn't say goodbye. I simply wished her peace. And then I began the final stage of my plan. I moved out that weekend. Took what was mine. Left behind what didn't matter. I wasn't petty. I didn't touch her things. I even paid the final utility bill, out of respect. Then I handed the keys to our agent and walked out of that house for good. I remember standing in the driveway for a moment, looking at the porch where we once drank coffee on rainy mornings, where she once told me she wanted a life that felt anchored. The irony wasn't lost on me. Back in my new apartment, everything was quieter. No incense, no crystal altars, no conversations about chakras or energy realignments, just space, silence, a blank canvas. I didn't cry, I didn't celebrate, I just adjusted, and it felt good, grounded, real. In the weeks that followed, the divorce papers were served. Julia was furious, not at the papers themselves, but at the fact I'd done it so cleanly. There was no scandal to expose, no argument to win. I hadn't cheated. I hadn't yelled. I had just ended it, like a quiet book closing. She tried to negotiate, not to get me back, but to delay the outcome. She said we should pause the divorce until she'd had time to fully explore this phase. I declined, politely, firmly. I never raised my voice, never called her names. I just stood tall in my truth. That was my power, not in what I said, but in what I refused to accept anymore. Some of our mutual friends were confused. A few reached out to ask what happened. I told them gently, we wanted different things. I chose peace. A few understood. Most didn't. That's the thing about quiet strength. It doesn't always make noise, so people miss it. But it's steady, and it grows. One night, a month after I'd moved out, Julia showed up at my door, unannounced. Her makeup was minimal, her hair tied back, the way she used to wear it when we were younger. She held a small container in her hands. Lasagna, my favorite. She smiled like nothing had changed. I thought we could talk. I didn't invite her in. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me, and thanked her. She stood there holding that cold container, waiting for me to say something, anything. I miss you, she said softly. I believed her. I just didn't care. I'm happy, Julia, I told her. Really happy. And I hope you find whatever it is you've been looking for. But that version of me, the one who waited while you figured things out, he's not here anymore. She blinked back tears. Maybe real, maybe performative. I'll never know. She asked, aren't you even going to try the lasagna? I smiled. Number, but thank you. I went back inside, closed the door, locked it. Not out of spite, but out of closure. Life moved on. My apartment started to feel like home. I found myself waking up with more energy, more clarity. I started running again. Signed up for a woodworking class on Saturdays. Things I hadn't done in years. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't someone's husband. I wasn't someone's emotional landing pad. I was just me. And that was enough. Julia sent a few messages over the next few weeks. She wanted to talk, wanted to reconnect. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, but because the man she was trying to reach no longer existed. He had grown. One afternoon, I ran into Celine at a local bookstore, the same Celine who once told Julia that marriage was a cage built by the patriarchy. She looked surprised to see me. A little nervous, maybe. She asked how I was doing. I'm good, I said. She nodded, offered a weak smile. Julia's been struggling. I didn't ask for details. I just wished her well and walked away. Because healing doesn't always mean revisiting the wreckage. Sometimes it just means building something new, far from the ruins. Months passed, seasons shifted. The silence that once felt foreign became a comfort I didn't know I needed. There were no more arguments to avoid, no emotional gymnastics to navigate. Just the clean simplicity of routine, peace, and quiet strength. I had my own space, my own rhythm, and for the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be someone else's idea of evolved. I kept working, kept building. My hands were busier than ever, but my mind was calmer. There's a kind of strength that only comes when you've walked through betrayal without letting it harden you. I wasn't bitter. I was better. The divorce was finalized without drama. The legal proceedings went smoothly. I had been prepared, precise, and respectful. Julia didn't contest anything in the end. Maybe she realized there was nothing left to fight for. In the months following, I watched her from a distance. Not intentionally, just through social media, mutual friends, the way stories circulate in small cities. Her spiritual circle seemed to shrink. The retreats became less frequent. The pictures lost their gloss. There was one post that caught my eye, a selfie from a beach, captioned with something like rediscovering self-love, but her eyes told a different story. I knew that look. It was the same one I wore when I pretended I was fine, long before I actually was. I didn't feel smug, just sad for her. Not because she lost me, but because she couldn't see what she had until it was already gone. That's how it often goes with people who confuse chaos with growth. They chase every shiny light thinking it's the sun. Meanwhile, I kept living. Quietly, fully. I started volunteering once a month at a local community center, helping kids with basic woodworking skills, teaching them how to hold a hammer, how to be patient with measurements, how to finish what they start. It gave me purpose again, something outside myself, something steady. One day, I bumped into an old friend from college, Rachel. We'd crossed paths years ago at a reunion, but nothing came of it then. This time, it felt different. We met for coffee, talked for hours. She had her own story, different from mine, but rooted in rediscovery too. Two people who knew what it meant to lose themselves and find something stronger on the other side. We didn't rush anything. That was the beauty of it. There was no need to impress, no games, just honesty, quiet conversations, and mutual respect. It felt real, earned. One Sunday morning, we sat together on a park bench watching the leaves fall. She turned to me and said, "You seem peaceful, like you've been through the fire and came out clean." I smiled. I did, and I stopped waiting for someone else to rescue me. There's a misconception that healing comes in loud declarations, in grand gestures and fireworks. But real healing is quiet. It's in the mornings when you make your own coffee and sit in silence without reaching for your phone. It's in saying no to what no longer serves you. It's in holding the line, not because you're being stubborn, but because you finally know your worth. Julia texted me again. It was short this time. "I'm sorry." No excuses, no explanations. Just 2 words. I stared at the screen for a while. I thought about replying, but I didn't. I'd already forgiven her. But some doors, once closed, should stay that way. Not out of hate, but out of love for the person you've become. She chose her path, and I chose mine. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is not proving someone wrong, but showing yourself what it looks like to be right for you. I still keep the apartment, still run in the mornings, still go to the workshop on weekends. I see Rachel every other Thursday. We don't talk about the past much. We both know the scars are there, but we've also learned not to pick at them. One evening, I opened a drawer in my apartment and found a photo of Julia and me from years ago. We were laughing, tangled in sunlight, sitting on that same porch we once loved. I didn't feel pain, just gratitude, that we had something that taught me how far I could bend and how far I wouldn't. That's the thing about quiet revenge. It's not about destroying someone else. It's about refusing to destroy yourself for their comfort. I didn't scream, I didn't beg, I didn't turn into someone I wasn't. I left, I healed, I built. And in doing so, I became the kind of man who no longer needs to be chosen to feel whole. I choose myself every day, and that's enough. And